I imagine most people are aware that Mark Twain was a pseudonym for Samuel Clemens, although fewer people know that Twain was not his only fake name. He also wrote under the names Thomas Jefferson Snodgrass and, of all things, the mononym Josh. This idea of a nom de plume, French for literally name of either the feather or pen, is a well-known phenomenon these days. There are many reasons why an author might choose a nom de plume. Some might like to keep their different lives separate, like Michael Crichton, who wrote medical thrillers while studying to be a doctor and didn't want his patients to worry that they would become his next story. Or politician and activist Stacey Abrams, who wrote romance novels at the same time as publishing tax advice, and in her own words thought it was worth it to keep these identities separate. Some nom de plumes disguise multiple authors, such as Ellery Queen, who, despite being a character in his own novels, is actually the composite work of Frederick Dene and Manfred Bennington Lee. Or the author of Red Dwarf, Grant Naylor, who is actually Rob Grant and Doug Naylor. And of course, some women like Marianne Evans have sought to hide their gender behind an assumed name, George Eliot, thanks to our society's long history of treating all people equally, as long as they are straight white men who are rich. There are even combinations of the above. Starting in the late 1800s, Edith Emma Cooper and her aunt, Catherine Harris Bradley, wrote together using the name Michael Field. This one is especially interesting because, despite being aunt and niece, they lived together as romantic partners for some 40 years and died within a year of each other. But where did this concept originate? As near as I can make out, the concept of a nom de plume has three separate origins that happened, all independent of each other, in the year 1503. The first, in no particular order, was a sort of artistic commune that sprouted in Germany among a small group of wealthy teenagers and 20-somethings who wanted to feel like rebels without really having to do much work or actually risk offending their parents enough to lose their inheritance. Ever original, they used the ancient Greece for their inspiration. They based their movement on a, frankly, poor understanding of Greek mythology. They styled themselves as various types of artists and believed that all inspiration came from the muses, not themselves. The poets struck first and took on noms de plume, or names of the feather, because, in their ignorance, they had conflated the muses with the harpies. The idea was to emphasize the art over the artist, or some such. Soon, other artists in the group took a liking to the idea. Painters took on a nom de cheveux, French for hair. Presumably this represented their brushes. And sculptors adopted a nom de marteau, or hammer. Why a group of German youth attempting to imitate ancient Greek life used French words is something I've not been able to discover. I guess it makes about as much sense as these pseudo-intellectual fads created by bored rich kids ever do. Anyways, the movement lasted about 2 years. As far as I can tell, none of the alleged art it produced survived, and nom de plume is its only legacy. The second example comes from France, where the religious community was temporarily rocked by the publication of a book that argued in favor of the Gnostic Gospels, a sort of alternative set of Gospels that presented a very different version of Jesus and a different theology than what the church accepted. Gnosticism was considered heresy, and it was forbidden. The text was published under a pseudonym, Esprit d'Ancre, but the author was eventually found out and had to face the Inquisition. That man, Georges d'Amboise, adopted a novel defense. He claimed that he had not written the text, but rather that his pen was possessed by a demon and was responsible for everything. For evidence, he pointed out that the text had been published under a name that essentially meant ink spirit. He claimed it was published under the name of the pen because the pen was the true author and he was merely a victim under another's control. George was acquitted and lived to die another day, in battle as it happened. The records do not say whether the Inquisition was convinced by his defense, but there are indications of a rather sizable donation to the church by Charles d'Amboise, George's father, whose positions of power included governor of Paris and later Grand Master of France. Ironically, Charles was excommunicated in 1510 for reasons completely unrelated to his son's book. Finally, the third example comes from England and the small town of Morpeth, where one of history's least known governmental experiments took place. the residents of the market town decided to declare their independence from the crown and form their own sovereign country, with a unique form of government. Each morning, a new king was chosen at random by drawing lots. His, and yes, it was limited to men, reign lasted a single day, and he had absolute authority to issue any commands or edicts that he wished. The twist was that all laws took effect 2 days later at noon, meaning that 2 other men would have been king by then. Either of them could effectively veto it. This was designed to limit unfair or capricious commands, because anything a king tried to implement, whether good or bad, had to meet with the approval of the next 2 randomly chosen monarchs. The symbol of the kingship was an ornate feather pen with which all laws and edicts must be signed. In essence, the power lay with the pen and not with the person. All laws were issued in the nom de plume, in the name of the pen, rather than in the name of the king. The experiment in governance lasted about 50 years, largely because it was a small town and they never actually told anyone what they were doing. Even the lord of nearby Morpeth Castle was completely unaware. Though, to be fair, he was quite young and spent most of his time away in what he considered more interesting parts of the world. It is certain that King Henry VII was never aware of it, and his son, Henry VIII, had, shall we say, other concerns on his mind? Sometime around 1554, the town basically stopped bothering and pretended it had never happened. To me, the most fascinating part of all of this is how, nearly simultaneously, the idea of nom de plume arose in 3 different places, for 3 different reasons, and with 3 related but different meanings. It almost feels like certain ideas or concepts are destined to exist. This sort of thing is not unheard of course. In nature, we have several examples of what we call convergent evolution, 2 or more species making remarkably similar adaptations on their own. We see this in, for example, cephalopods, vertebrates, and Cnidaria, which all independently developed eyes that, while having some important differences, are remarkably similar. Comedians also talk about parallel thinking, wherein 2 or more comics come up with substantially similar jokes on their own. There have even been instances of examples so strikingly similar that they have led to accusations of plagiarism. I wonder how many more examples like nom de plume have happened, but fell by the wayside and no one ever noticed. Is it possible that we are surrounded by this sort of thing? That certain ideas arise again and again, hoping to eventually take hold? I don't know, but I do think that that is an idea worth exploring.